Hi, I'm Josh, and I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend some time with me as I talk about this delightful little book called Legends Lattes, written by Travis Baldree, who apparently is an audiobook narrator who decided to write his own book. And yes, you are looking at this video going, wait, this isn't an hour long. Are you sure this is a Josh Yaks book review? And yes, it is a book review, but it's just a delightful little book. It doesn't have a lot of really profound things to say, but it's just an enjoyable experience. And so I'm not going to spend hours reading thought-provoking quotes from the book or anything like that, just tell you about what a great little book this was. One of the very first things I noticed when I started to read Legends Lattes was all these delightful little illustrations that show up at the beginning of every chapter. And each of these illustrations is a unique picture that depicts just one little element that appears in the upcoming chapter that you're about to read. And I thought, wow, what a delightful little touch. I really kind of enjoyed that design aspect of this book before I even really started reading it. Now, when I did start reading it, I was initially just slightly turned off by the writing style. I found that the ways things were being described wasn't the best writing. It wasn't really bad by any means, but I felt like it was a little bit weak in terms of how things were being written. But that very quickly vanished as I continued into the book, and I don't know if it's because the writing simply got better as he continued to write the book, or if I just got accustomed to it stylistically, but it definitely got to the point where I was noticing some especially good writing, such as this little quote here talking about a bartender, and it says, "Apparently satisfied that she wasn't spoiling for a fight, he cocked a thumb at the corner and went back to swabbing the grime of the bar top into new and more interesting locations." And I thought that's just a delightful way of describing somebody polishing their bar's countertop. So I ended up thinking that the writing was fairly decent after all. Certainly not world-changing prose, but very functional and delightful in its own little way. As for the story itself, as usual, I'm not going to spoil anything, so just a very brief synopsis of the plot. It is about this very large orc named Viv, who has decided to leave behind her career of mercenary for hire and sort of put aside all those violent and murderous ways and start an actual little started this little coffee shop in a town that she decided could use a coffee shop. Coffee being an unfamiliar food for most people in this world. She gets a very skilled carpenter to help her build her little cafe. She hires Tandri to help her at the shop, as well as a highly talented baker named Thimble, and kind of assembles this little crew. And so we get this beautiful little found family kind of situation in our story, which is a trope that I personally love quite a bit, having had some issues with my own real life family and friends who ended up being as close as family to me, so I enjoyed that aspect of it. The back of the book states that this is a novel of high fantasy and low stakes, and all the other booktubers who I've watched reviewing this book have echoed this statement here, but I disagree with it. When the actual lives of your characters are at stake at various points in the story, that's not low stakes. I did find myself feeling kind of anxious about situations that were developing and the threats of violence and real actual murderous intent of certain people. So having someone's life in danger, I don't consider to be low stakes. So I don't really agree with that particular assessment of the book. I think the point is, though, that the atmosphere of the book is one that is more of a cozy, delightful atmosphere, as opposed to your typical hack and slash medieval fantasy type of situation. That I did appreciate a lot. I do find myself, yes, drawn to certain aspects of warlike medieval fantasy, but even more so towards kind of peaceful aspects of existing in these fantasy worlds. So I really kind of liked that quite a bit. In fact, the book gave me a very similar feeling to The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. There were certain parallels between these two books that really gave me a similar feeling and kind of a similar overall atmosphere, and just kind of a warm, happy feeling at the end of each of these two books. I will say that other booktubers were correct in their assessment of the descriptions of all the wonderful baked goods that they were preparing in their cafe here. I legitimately did spend more money at the bakery of my local grocery store while I was reading this book, and it certainly prompted purchases at the bakery, as well as put to mind some things that I should try baking on my own. So yeah, I'm personally a huge sucker for baked goods and for sweet stuff in general, so that's right up my alley. There's only one quote that I'm going to read from the book, just because it made a couple of interesting statements that I appreciated. This quote does have a brief moment of cursing, but because I don't like to censor books, I will read it as written here. We have Tandri here, who is a succubus, talking with Viv, the orc, talking about how she had gone to university for a time to attempt to educate herself and kind of, I guess, increase her social standing to a certain extent. And in talking to Viv, Tandri says, "I thought, a university, that's a place where ideas are challenged, where what you do matters, not where you come from or what you came from. A place where logic and math and science would prove that I'm more than what I was born to. But it seems I take that with me wherever I go." "You attended, though," says Viv. Tandri nodded grimly. "I did. I scrimped together the tuition, and I was granted admission. Nobody stopped me. They took my money, absolutely. There are no bylaws keeping someone like me out. But it didn't matter, not really. What's the saying? They followed the letter of the law, but not the spirit." She sighed. "The spirit was unenlightened." Viv thought about Kellen and nodded. "So I fled, again." They allowed the silence to resume, and Viv passed Tandri the brandy. She drank more deeply, and when she wiped her mouth, she looked over at Viv. "No pearls of wisdom?" "Nope." Tandri's eyebrows rose. "But I will say," Viv glanced over to regard Tandri solemnly, "fuck those motherfuckers." Tandri's surprised laugh startled the birds from the cherry trees. There were a couple of things about this that are kind of different topics, but stood out to me about this little passage here. And one is the whole world of academia and the rich people that it was established to attract and to keep as the top of society. And the fact that though Tandri was more of a kind of lower class person who got into the institution, when she got in there, she was still not accepted because of who she was. And I'm sure there's a lot that could be said about this attitude of academia and the way the institutions like that continue to perpetrate certain class differences within society and so on. But anyways, it was just an interesting point. The other thing was that when Tandri was kind of pouring out her heart to Viv and just sharing this trouble with her, I love that Viv didn't try to come back with helpful advice or try to fix the problem or come up with a solution or something to make her feel better. I like that she just sat there and listened. She didn't offer pearls of wisdom that she thought might help lift Tandri's spirits, but instead she allowed herself to get angry on behalf of Tandri. And I thought, what a great response to somebody who is just having this difficult moment and is sharing these personal things with somebody. I think so often we want to try to be helpful instead of just listening and sharing emotionally with the person who is pouring themselves out. And I thought, what a wonderful way to respond to that situation. So yes, on the whole, it was a very lovely book. I gave it a high rating of 8 out of 10. I've seen almost universal praise across YouTube for this particular book, and I don't always agree with books that end up being popular on YouTube, but in this case I did. For example, Chaz of the YouTube channel Bookist Chaz has stated that it was one of the best, if not the best, book he's read so far this year, so I'll try to remember to link his video below if you want to check out another rave review from somebody who liked it probably even more than I did. So it's an excellent book. Apparently Travis Baldree is working on writing a prequel to this story, and the name of it I've forgotten, but I'll put up here. I'm definitely going to be picking that up as soon as I can get my hands on it, and I'm looking forward to reading his next book. If you read Legends and Lattes, let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. Or if you're just reading other books that you have been enjoying lately, please do comment and tell me all about them. I do love to hear about what you're reading, what you're enjoying, maybe what you're looking forward to reading. I want to send a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters, to Abe O, Saver Girl, Mojo Dam, Joanna, King Booty, and especially my highest tier supporter, Asmondas Perfect. Whether you support me financially through Patreon or through interacting with my videos with thumbs up and subscriptions and comments, or just with spending your valuable time watching my videos, I really appreciate all of you, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon. Cheers. I will, this little